Hello everyone, I'm TG, and welcome to Super Earth, your home for democracy. Today we're talking about Helldivers 2, and what I want to go over are a few things that either the game doesn't tell you, or it's not super clear about. Nonetheless, these are things that you really need to know if you want to excel. So some of them you might already know, but there might be a few that surprise you. So strap in, and let's dive right in. Now, number one, during your struggle against the alien menace, don't forget that on almost all your weapons, you can hold square to either bring up a little menu that shows you the different scope levels or some other kind of alt fire. Now this is super useful because a lot of the long ranged weapons have different levels of magnification, and it's really important to choose what works best for you, and there's even an auto option for a lot of them that can be pretty helpful as well. So number two might seem like a no-brainer, but it actually took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to figure out. While you're aiming your gun, you can actually press a button to mark targets. So this can be enemies, items, supply drops, whatever. Now this is super useful, especially whenever you're playing the horde type maps or you're waiting for your drop or something like that, because it lets your team know where enemies are coming from if they're not facing that direction. Next, let's talk about the drop pod. There's actually a lot of fun things you can do. You can move it whenever you are respawning or just getting into the area, which I didn't know. It does say it on the screen, but you know, I'm kind of an idiot, and maybe you are too. So keep that in mind and try to make sure you're dropping somewhere advantageous and not in a whole slew of enemies, because then you're just gonna die again. Another fun thing you can do with the drop pod is you can actually land on cliffs, sometimes cliffs that are inaccessible any other way. Now I always say the high ground is king, so I find this really useful, especially in hairy situations. Now the last and perhaps most important thing about the drop pod is A, it can kill your teammates, so be careful, but B, it can also kill both enemies and bases. Now that's huge, because a lot of the times the team is out of grenades and you don't have a supply on hand, but if you happen to die, if you're real smart and you're real careful, you can maneuver it so you actually land on a base and destroy it and stop the enemies from spawning. I can't tell you how many times this has come in handy for me. Moving on is one that is really important. I find it super useful, and I don't think the game tells you it, but it's pretty easy to figure it out on your own. But if you haven't, whenever you pull up your minimap, it actually shows enemies that are close to you. So obviously I don't need to explain why that's so advantageous, but rest assured it's really useful on those foggy maps or just when there's all kinds of craziness on the screen, especially in the higher difficulties, because it'll let you know where to expect another attack from. Next is just a little information on the stim pack that I think a lot of people forget. Obviously, it heals you, so that's the most important thing, but it also gives you full stamina. So that's useful whenever you're slowed or whenever you've been running for a long time. The only downside is you can't use it at full health, so you have to actually be missing some health to benefit from it. But I find a lot of the times, even when I'm not that damaged, I use it because I need the stamina more than anything. Next is a short and sweet one for whenever you're fighting those fun automatons. They'll throw grenades at you from time to time, and did you know you can actually throw them back? Or kick them back, to be precise? A little prompt comes up on the screen. It's actually the X button on PlayStation, but this not only gets the grenade away from you, but it's pretty good at auto-tracking back at who threw it at you, and I've gotten a lot of kills from this that I wouldn't otherwise have gotten. Believe it or not, it's actually super worth it if you see a grenade like mid-range, to run up to it just so you can kick it. You'd be amazed how many times you're going to get that kill. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about reloading. So we all know whenever you reload with some ammo in your magazine, you're going to lose all that leftover ammo. So you basically always want to be dry before you reload. However, there are a few weapons, mostly some shotguns and revolvers, where you reload them cartridge by cartridge. So that means you can always keep it topped up and always be reloading on your downtime, and you're not going to lose any ammo from doing that. Just remember that whenever you switch back to the other weapons, it's not going to work that way. And lastly is actually a system that's in the game that maybe not a lot of people realize, and it's because it doesn't really get to be a big issue until the harder difficulties, I would say from hard onwards. But if you actually look whenever you're selecting your mission, at the bottom, you'll see these little modifier things. And so far I haven't encountered anything too crazy, but I haven't played on like the hardest difficulty. But you'll see things like bigger enemies or stronger enemies or stuff like that. And I can only imagine it's going to get super complicated, so it's just something to keep in mind whenever you're choosing your loadout. So there you have it, my fellow patriots. I hope this list helps you guys out whenever you are diving into the breach, and let me know down below if there's anything that you guys have found that the game doesn't tell you that might be important for other people to know. That being said, guys, I hope you stick around the channel because there's going to be all kinds more of guides, builds, and gameplay coming very soon for this awesome game that is Helldivers 2. So get out there and spread democracy.